the New England Patriots. Okay, the 2024 Patriots were fully expected, to be a sad excuse for a professional football team. That's pretty much what happened. Only week 18, Joe Milton heroics against the Bills' backups prevented his 4-13 squad from securing the number 1 overall pick. Okay, the defense flashed a little bit, but this was still, and by a large margin, a bad football team. 30th in points per game. That's 17. Okay, and then points per game against, they almost allowed 25 per game and were ranked 22nd. But yet there were suddenly, there's glimmers of hope ahead of next season thanks to new head coach Mike Vrabel. Obviously, rising star Drake Maye. Throwing an offensive line overhaul and the additions of playmakers like Stephon Diggs and Trayvon Henderson. If you squint hard enough, you can see the Patriots messing around and contending for a wild card spot. Accordingly, again, today's goal, what are we doing? We're answering fantasy questions about the New England Patriots. Is Drake Maye a late-round quarterback target? There was a weird sentiment with Maye last season, revolving around the idea that the Patriots should refrain from playing him at all costs due to this being such a bad offensive environment, right? Everybody was like, no, don't bring in Maye, just let him sit. There's no reason to risk injury, right? On the one hand, yeah, nobody had a worse supporting cast rating in 2025. And clearly New England still didn't resemble a contender upon inserting, number 3 overall pick into the starting lineup. On the other hand, Maye sure looked like a lot like the team's long-term answer under center despite the lack of winning football. Okay, 3 appearances with under 31% of the offense snaps per game numbers a bit. But accounting for this gave the rookie stellar averages of 223 passing yards per game and 36 rushing yards per game. He does have a little bit of legs, guys. Giving Maye the benefit of the doubt, here are the only other quarterbacks to clear those 220 passing yards and 35 rushing yards per game. Okay? Great company, guys. Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Michael Vick, Dante Culpepper, Randall Cunningham, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Robert Griffin III, Donovan McNabb, Steve Young, and Drake Maye. Great company. Now, note that Jaden Daniels also would have qualified if you remove his 2 sub 50% snap games from last season. Either way, again, pretty damn good company. Of course, the real difference maker in fantasy land among this group is the rushing prowess at hand. Something that Maye provided to be awfully good at as a rookie and during his time in North Carolina. Okay, overall, nobody averaged more yards per carry than Maye last season. 7.8. As a rookie, racked up more rushing yards on scrambles than last season, as the rookie racked up more rushing yards on scrambles than anyone other than Daniels. So he was second. Okay? Now, that's right. You read that right. I just said what I said. Maye was technically more lethal than Lamar freaking Jackson when scrambling. Okay? High-end volume. Rushing quarterbacks seldom bust in fantasy land, and this alone is enough for Maye to be a target in the later rounds of drafts. Although it would be nice to see an improvement in the passing department. Now, of course, Demario Douglas and Keyshawn Boutte were probably the league's worst 1-2 punch at wide receiver last season. Okay? They were PFF's reigning 32nd ranked offensive line. Also, obviously, didn't help matters. Here's to hoping Josh McDaniels, the return, can also pull a few rabbits out of his hat and make life easier for Maye. I'm particularly excited to see some of the design quarterback run concepts. I think that I'm excited about Trayvon Henderson helping him out. Stephon Diggs is obviously a big one, but we'll get into these guys. Drake Maye, what is the fantasy outlook for 2025? Maye is the cheapest quarterback in the fantasy football who we can reasonably expect to run a lot and start 17 games with good health. Sorry, Anthony Richardson. I just don't trust anymore. Now, while I don't blame folks for leaving Maye behind fellow nimble signal callers like Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, or Trevor Lawrence, I have him at the top of that tier. And either way, he's a great example of the sort of late-round quarterback to target. And a good reason why it might not be worth reaching on that second-tier passers this season due to relatively a stable tier of passers. How much superior upside does Kyler Murray really have over Drake Maye? You know what I mean? And that's quarterback 8 to quarterback 16, according to Fantasy Life. Now, note that from quarterback 8 to quarterback 16, they are only separated by less than 1 fantasy point. Okay, so that's a lot of consistency right there, that big gap. Will Trayvon Henderson lose carries to Rhamondre Stevenson? Okay, the explosive Ohio State running back who was selected this last April presumably leads this Patriots backfield. Okay, now this is on top of the Patriots giving Stevenson a 4-year extension last June. Now, for a reason. Now, Vrabel and McDaniels weren't in charge then when that was agreed to. But then again, the latter OC was running the show. McDaniels was running the show in 2021 when Stevenson averaged 12.6 carries and targets per game while working alongside, I think it was Damian Harris and Brandon Bolden. Okay, not great competition, but again, Damian Harris was a gadget guy. Okay, it really is McDaniel's pass running back usage that makes me hesitant to assume Henderson will completely take over this backfield. We certainly have seen the longtime Patriots OC, now the ex-Raiders head coach, lean on one single back, Josh Jacobs. Okay, Josh Jacobs led the NFL with nearly 400 touches in 2022 under McDaniels. But I'm also old enough to remember the annual horror of attempting to figure out which Patriots running back would emerge as the best fantasy option through the 2010s. James White, we had Rex Burkhead. We had all these. We have always had a running back problem when it comes to fantasy in the Patriots running back room. Okay. Now, Stevenson is a capable receiving back. But this is really Henderson's calling card. Okay? Final note is Antonio Gibson probably just won't be a part of this committee. Might not even be a lock to make the roster, I'm going to be honest. But just realize his advanced metrics were borderline erotic last season. And there were more than a few baller plays on film, from Antonio Gibson. Now, there are a dozen of us who still believe in him. Maybe trade to the Cowboys. I could see that. There's some fantasy managers that still believe in Antonio Gibson. Okay. How will touches be broken up in the Patriots backfield? Henderson's profiles as the backfield's explosive pass game option, right? And accordingly should be the higher ranked back in PPR formats due to the receiving ability. That said, this still doesn't exactly profile as an offense expected to function as a top 10 scoring unit. So I have a tough time getting the rookie inside the position's top 24 players. Meanwhile, Stevenson is in a similar boat as Najee Harris. Unlikely to see the sort of 3-down role that would lead to running back 2 production. But double-digit weekly touches are likely still on the table. Okay, there's also some nice contingent upside here if Henderson happens to miss a game in any action, right? Stevenson is an underrated, solid 0 running back target. We've talked about those. Remember the 0 running back target draft strategies. Okay. Next is the wide receiver room. Is Stephon Diggs healthy enough to be the Patriots wide receiver 1? Now, Diggs has been posting some promising training footage coming off his unfortunate late October ACL tear. Dr. Jeff Mueller is the one that did his ACL. He believes that there's a decent chance he'll be fine throughout the season, given his current level of training. And joked that all the players who were ahead of schedule, Diggs actually might finally be the one that is actually ahead of schedule. Therefore, it seems to be a reasonable chance that Diggs is game ready by the summer, let alone week 1. Now, additionally, the Patriots must feel good. Well, it must feel at least pretty good about Diggs' chances of contributing early in 2025, considering they signed to pay him $63 million over the next 3 years. Now, they can get out of the deal without too much pain as early as 2026. Just realize that 21 per year is on par for what guys like Devontae Adams and Chris Godwin got this past offseason. Okay. Diggs ripped off 4 consecutive top 10 PPR seasons during his time in Buffalo before working as the wide receiver 17 during the first 8 weeks of last season with the Texans. Okay. So when he was there, he was projected to be possibly a top 15 wide receiver last year. There really isn't anyone else to get overly excited about in this wide receiver room. I know Ken's gonna give me some flack on that one. Pop Douglas, I know. But guess what? Fantasy value wise, it's got to be seen. I see these guys as waiver wire pickups, not somebody I would draft. Okay. Especially considering this uncertainty surrounding if anyone else were to manage to hold down a true full-time role, right? Now, if Diggs were to go down, guys, we go back to the same wide receiver room that was bottom of the league last year. Okay? Kyle Williams, however, I do like that. I do like Kyle Williams. Speedy, field stretching, 3rd-round pick. Earned really mad reviews for Fantasy Life. But, hey, the opportunity is sure there to be a top target. Mac Hollins, okay, noted hater of soup and shoes. Profiles as the exact sort of big-bodied blocker that Mike Vrabel probably loves. I think he's going to be more of a blocker than he is anything else, okay? Demario Douglas. Pint-sized slot, right, with some enticing short area movement skills, but unlikely to be in those 2 wide receiver sets. I think that is going to be Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs. Now, Keyshawn Bulte made a handful of big plays downfield inside this wide receiver room last year. He is from LSU. You know, it is what it is. Dark horse contender, I think for me, would be Kendrick Bourne, who just signed a 3-year deal last March. Jalen Polk, his average of 2.6 yards per target is the 3rd worst mark in NFL history among all wide receivers to earn at least 25 targets in a single season. So that's not really jumping off the page at me. And Javon Baker, guys, caught 1 pass last season. So let's not bring up that name either. Okay. Can we trust any Patriots wide receiver in fantasy? Well, we have really no evidence of Diggs working as anything other than a high-end fantasy wide receiver, right? And yet early ADP has him going outside of the top 40 options at the position. Personally, it feels like the age, 32 in November, and injury concern is more than baked into that price. Okay. The man hasn't finished worse than wide receiver 25 in points per game in 10 years, guys. 10 years. Maybe I'll regret this, but Diggs is one of the most drafted wide receivers of the offseason. 49ers and Packers wide receiver in the similar ADP range simply just don't have the same likelihood of working as their pass game's clear-cut number one option, right? Meanwhile, Williams is someone I've been happy to dabble with. In the later portions, I really do like Kyle Williams and think that he has the possibility of being Drake Maye's favorite target. Okay, so does the fantasy football world not give Hunter Henry enough respect? Scholars debate to this day exactly how good Hunter Henry is. Early career injuries in the presence of an old man, Antonio Gates, right, certainly didn't help matters, but we are talking about someone who has never gained even 700 receiving yards in 9 seasons. Now, don't get it twisted. The man isn't terrible. But are we really still chasing those Charger highs in the year 2025? I can't do it. The man just led the Patriots in targets at 97 last season. And all it produced was a top 16 finish, a tight end 16 finish. There were 6 top 10 finishes mixed in there last year, but Jiminy Christmas, man. He would have finished wide receiver 54. I mean, I'm just anyone else has to be offended by this. So we're going to keep it short and sweet. Is Hunter Henry worth a late round draft pick? Okay, Austin Hooper quietly snaked away 59 targets last year and earned 60 while working as Mike Vrabel's lead back in 2022. Tight end. Okay? Henry's starting job is not going anywhere. But just realize that something even close to a committee would be worrisome inside an improved passing game. I'm proud to be the lowest of the fantasy really rankers I've seen at tight end 23. I vastly prefer guys like Mike Gesicki, Cade Otton, and yes, even Kyle Pitts ahead of him in late round drafts. Excuse me. Do the Patriots have a budding star on the defense? Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the defense and then the prediction, and then we're going to get out of here. Do the Patriots have a budding star on defense? The rising third-year corner certainly had himself one hell of a 2024, surrendering only 499 total yards and 2 trips to the end zone. Okay, now among 81 corners who were targeted at least 50 times last season, Gonzalez posted top 10 marks in passer rating allowed and catch rate on targets into his coverage. Okay, now he's obviously going with the number one wide receivers, guys. Okay, I think I love me some Christian Gonzalez. And in those IDP leagues, Christian Gonzalez is the man to have. All right, so as a whole team, what is our Patriots prediction and hot take for 2025? Vegas is buying into the idea that the Patriots will be a better football team in 2025. Okay, their 7.5 win total has a solid 155 under, lean to the over, and matches the Seahawks, Falcons, Cowboys, Jags, and Colts. I get it. Not the world's greatest company, but at least there are 7 teams with worse outlooks. Excuse me. And you know what? I'm in. I'm all in. Thanks to the belief in May, Vrabel, and a retooled defense and a retooled offensive line, Give me the over on a 7.5 win. And my bold fantasy prediction is that a healthy Stephon Diggs clears 1,000 yards and finishes as a top 24 wide receiver in points per game.